Well, hello, LifeSite friends. Today is such a special day because I've been waiting to have this conversation with Kennedy Hall for a couple of weeks now, and I am so excited. If you don't know who Kennedy Hall is, by the way, you need to know because this man has something to say. He is my colleague at LifeSite, where he's one of our great staff writers, but he does many, many things. I'm going to bring Kennedy in right now from the great white north on the other side of the Iron Curtain. He's in Canada, of course. Kennedy Hall, welcome to LSN TV.
Thank you. I think we call it the COVID curtain nowadays, or maybe it's the Trudeau wet blanket. Either one works.
Yes. Well, Kennedy, we are here chiefly to talk about this book that I'm holding in my hand right now. I just finished it this morning. It is called Terror of Demons, Reclaiming Traditional Catholic Masculinity. And brother, I got to tell you, this book just knocked me out. And I've learned a lot of things about you, Kennedy. And one thing that is for certain, you are one heck of a writer. And this book was just like a punch right in the face to me. Kennedy, tell us about Terror of Demons, why you thought it was time to write a book on reclaiming traditional Catholic masculinity.
Sure. Thanks for that. I was going for the gut throat punchy feeling, so I'm glad that it was translated across. Well, I'm a prodigal son, like most people are these days, unless you've been raised in a really devout family. And even if you are, maybe you fall away as it happens. I was raised in a nominally Catholic family. My mom's an Italian immigrant. Dad hails from a line of English Catholics. I was baptized, went to the sort of parochial Catholic schools that didn't really teach me much, sadly. So it came time for me to be a man and be a father and, embark on a career and all those sorts of things. For all of my faults, and I have many, one of the things that I've never been okay with is hypocrisy. So when I decided that I wanted to be a teacher, I wanted to teach in the Catholic school system, which I had great fond memories from, irrespective of the theological problems, that they were great schools as far as it goes, great football and that sort of thing. And I remember I had to attest to a religious belief to teach in the school, which makes sense. I mean, you're supposed to be Catholic to teach in them. And I remember knowing I was going to have to do that. So I had made the decision before I went to teachers college that I was going to say, yes, I'll enter teachers college with the intention of going through that Catholic stream. And then I'll make my decision at the end, whether or not I actually believe the religion and will teach in the schools or whether I'd go the public school route. C.S. Lewis has a quote where he says something like, the minute a young man decides to look honestly into Christianity, that's the moment he actually starts becoming a Christian. That was the same thing for me. I was a secular, I call myself, I was a Joe Rogan bro. I was into, the secular masculine things, trying to find my way, looking into science and evolution and all these sorts of things. And then I decided to look into the faith. And when I did, I found a wealth of obviously theology and everything. But then when it came time to go deeper and I was having children after my major reversion at Guadalupe, which we can probably talk about as we go on, I realized that it was hard to find a single resource. It really was. I mean, I've looked everywhere for a single resource for Catholic men. And there is one from TAN. It was called the Manual for Manhood or something like that. And really what it was a collection of some writings from saints and then an encyclical from Bishop Olmsted. And it was fine, but it wasn't really a practical guide. So I thought, I've been devouring all this stuff for the last few years. I think I can write okay. So I basically decided to do it as a spiritual exercise for myself. And I thought, this will be helpful for me. It'll help me organize my thoughts. And then if people want to buy it, good for them. And it sort of turned into this thing that it's become, and it's had more success than I ever dreamed of.
Yeah, Kennedy, although you're a prodigal son and you really embraced the faith as an adult, there was a moment, though, when you were a high school football player that you set up in the very first chapter, the very first page of this fine book, where you talk about you witnessed something at Mass one day that you will never forget. Why was that moment such an impact for you? And tell us what that was.
Sure. So for our American viewers, yes, hockey is number one up here, but football is a very close second for a lot of people, especially as a school sport. And I had the privilege of playing for the Catholic Central High School Crusaders in London, Ontario. and we won the equivalent of state a couple times, provincial title. We don't have states; we just call it province. And big quad A school. It was a wonderful thing, and I had these amazing coaches who I don't know anything about their personal piety. I haven't seen them in years. I don't know if they adhere to all the dogmas of the church. I have no idea, but I do know that they led by example about being virtuous and taking the faith seriously. And one of the things that we had to do is we had to go to mass on the morning of games. Now, usually our games were on Thursdays. So we go to morning mass at 7:30 in the morning before class at the cathedral downtown London, Ontario. It was great. It was a fun thing, dress up in a shirt and tie and go. And but this one game, it was the semifinal for the, let's call it, state championship. And because of global warming, there was a massive dump of snow in early December. And it was December 2nd or 3rd or something like that. It was actually a pretty early snowfall as far as the size of it goes. And it was huge. So the game was supposed to be on a Saturday, but it got snowed out. So we were playing on artificial turf. And so all that day and the next morning, they had to cancel the game, but they had these Bobcat plows come in and actually plow the field. So the next day we rescheduled the game for Sunday. The team couldn't get in the day before because they couldn't drive on the highway. So we scheduled it for Sunday. And we played on this artificial turf with the sidelines were literally walls of snow. So guys were getting tackled, in 2-3 yards from the sideline. They were getting tackled into a snowbank. It was amazing. And, guys were one of our strong safeties. He would get up after he tackled the guy and he'd throw a little bit of snow in his face without the ref seeing, little things like that. It was awesome. And we won the game. It was great. But that morning, we had to go to Sunday mass as a team. And usually we just went to morning mass. So the coaches brought their whole families because it was Sunday. And I was in there. We were in this spot that was reserved for the football players. And our coaches came in with their families. And these men were giants to me. One of them actually was. He was about 6'5" and a former college wide receiver. But the other guys, it was their persona. They were so big to me. I would run through a brick wall for those guys. Literally, it's not a joke. I saw them just kneel down in prayer. And for that moment, it stuck with me. And there was something, it gives me goosebumps to think about it. I don't know what it was, but I just realized that they were more magnanimous and taller in some way when they were kneeling than when they were standing. They were taller when they were on their knees. And it's just a moment that stuck with me for years. And when I went to apply to Teachers College and had to consider Catholicism, that moment, along with a couple others, was actually at the front of my mind. And I realized I didn't know what tradition was in the sense of the religion, but I knew that whatever my ancestors had done, they had done great things, and they gave me this religion. And I owed it at least to those men to give it a second thought.
Yes, Kennedy, but what you go on to describe in this book, and it really made me want to run through a brick wall and eat roofing nails at the same time, is that you go on to describe the absolute crisis we have in masculinity in this effeminate culture. Men have become effeminate. You don't have to look any further than the prime minister of your great country, Justin Trudeau. I mean, this guy is really, sadly, a symbol of male effeminacy today.
Yeah, and we should probably define what we mean by that as well. The term effeminate does not mean feminine, which I've since released. I released this book self-publishing in May 2020, and just at the beginning of 2 weeks to slow the spread. And and some of the criticisms were from people who had no idea what it's about. They believe that effeminacy means femininity. That's not the case. I don't know why the words have a similar etymology to them. I have no idea. English language is a funny thing. But the word effeminacy means a reluctance to suffer due to an attachment to pleasure. Okay. And so St. Thomas Aquinas talks about it. It basically means being soft. So he uses an analogy in the Summa Theologica that's like a door that yields to blows easily, that's rotting, a piece of wood that's rotting. You could actually technically say it's an effeminate door. So when we talk about virtue, when a man is effeminate, it means he doesn't have any virtue. And the word virtue literally means strength. And it actually comes from the word vir, which means man in Latin, which is why in old literature, you see things like, he handled that situation manfully, even if he's a boy. right? Or you even find in spiritual writers that are women in the Catholic Church, you'll say, they're looking for manly nuns. They don't mean modern pantsuit wearing nuns. They mean nuns who have virtue. And obviously our political correct culture, they can't stand this, but that's what the word means. And yes, Justin Trudeau, he is the epitome of an effeminate man. He is hiding from truckers. He's hiding from his own citizens. He is just ruining everyone's life, and for no reason. He's just a petty dictator. And all of the problems in our society, I believe, and in the church, every single one could be boiled down to effeminate men who are not willing to suffer because they have attachments to pleasure. And because of that, the bad men are able to take over.
Yeah, Kennedy. And, we're having this conversation one day after the news broke with Pope Francis, making the statement that apostates are still members of the church. So now, we have the leader of the church telling men that it's okay if you sin. You really double down on sin in this book, and you talk about the reality of heaven and hell, and why men need to have a real grasp of just what the church teaches, what the deposit of faith is on that subject.
Yes, I'm not a military man. I'm more of a sports guy, so I'll use sporting analogies, but I've listened to a lot of podcasts and things like that from Navy SEALs, and I think they apply. If you want to have success in anything that you do, you have to have a strategy. And in order to have a strategy, you have to recognize what your obstacles are going to be. And you have to have a plan to meet them head on, defend yourself against them, and one-up them or overcome them. This is the same in sports. This is the same in business. This is the same in military history. If you don't recognize what the threat is, then you can't defeat it, and it'll defeat you. One of the greatest lies in the church today is, and I know it's not officially a dogma, but it's basically being peddled around with modernism, is that there's no hell, or that nobody goes there, or that there's no devil. The devil is just a personified force of, hatred or something like that. The devil's very real. Okay. Scripture is inspired by God. It's infallible. There's no errors in it. It's very clear in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, the devil's real and he wants your soul. If you don't operate with that fundamental axiomatic principle about the spiritual life, you will fail. If you don't recognize the fact that there is a hell and that the devil wants you to be there, you're very likely to end up there. I know the devil doesn't sleep. I know he's a pure spirit. But if we could use an analogy for a second, he wakes up every day and says, how many souls can me and my minions devour today? How many souls can we bring to hell to be with us in eternal hellfire for all eternity? So it's time for men to wake up and smell the sulfur and realize that the fires of hell are a very real thing. That doesn't mean that everything bad that happens in your life is because of the devil. It's not, you make a mistake because you're an idiot. It doesn't mean the devil made me do it. You can make mistakes. But you have to recognize that the devil is there. The devil really wants your soul. If you don't recognize that, you will have no strategy and you will have no defense. And sadly, you'll end up losing.
Well, Kennedy, and you do have a very frank discussion in this book, Terror of Demons. I just keep looking at this. It's such a beautiful book, Kennedy. Tan did a tremendous job publishing this. I know you must be so pleased with how this came out. But you have a really frank discussion about how the devil enters into men's homes. And, what really convicted me, I got to be honest with you, was just in the way that has led to men, including Catholic men, failing as the spiritual leaders of their family.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think I will. I'll speak to the primary way that the devil gets in. There's a reason why they call prostitution the oldest profession. Okay, because the sins of the flesh are the most common, and they're the most they're the simplest. I don't care if you're a super intelligent, highly educated man, or if you're a very simple man. Although in today's world, being uneducated probably makes you smarter than most of the expert class. I don't care where you are. You have an animal nature, okay? So you're likely to fall to that if you're not careful. The most clear way the most obvious way that the devil infiltrates the home of men today, whether they're married or not, is through the vice of pornography. Now, I'm going to use the term evil images. I don't like the term pornography because it's become sanitized. Just like I don't like the term vaccine passport. That's not what it is. It's medical apartheid. We need to call it what it is. People use the term, they'll say fear porn or something like that. I don't like how it's become a colloquial term, so I'll use one to say what it really is. It's evil images. It's images that are used by evil and facilitated by evil so that you will spend eternity in hell. That's exactly what it is. And men are, plagued by this. I don't know what the statistics are. Depends on how you define addiction, anywhere from 20% pure addiction to 80% pure addiction, whatever it is. Men are using this all the time. And just if I may, if there's any children listening to this, leave the room for a second, because I would like to describe, I wrote an article for Crisis Magazine the other day talking about fighting the demon of pornography. I think that men need to really understand just how vile this whole thing is. And, the only way that men are going to beat that vice, in my opinion, is if they really come to hate it. Righteous hatred for what it is. It is an exploitation of its human trafficking of young women. It is the directors and producers. They basically make addicted young prostitutes and turn them into victims they coerce by legal gerrymandering. Many of the women who are in the scenes on the internet are actually dead. So it's sort of a sin of necromancy because you're essentially, committing a very solitary vice to a corpse. That's how disgusting it is. In addition, and this is one that if I talk to a group of young men about this and I want to get their attention, it's also an intrinsically homosexual activity, because you, a man, are with yourself a man, and that's the object of your pleasure. Men have to see this for what it is, and they have to be disgusted by it, because this is the primary tool that Satan uses today to drag you away from God and also infiltrate your family. I say in the book something like, a home where a father is addicted to evil images is not a home, it's a prison. And that's exactly it. So if there's any one reason why I hope men would pick up this book, it's not all about evil images. There's lots in there, but that is the primary vice for men today. And I think that this book as a whole, it'll inspire a righteous hatred for it, but it'll also give you the practical tools to overcome it.
All right, Kennedy, let's talk about these practical things you can do. And you make it crystal clear here that everything that the church, that we can avail ourselves of from the church is what we need, not watered down Catholicism. What we need is the authentic teachings of the church. And we need to practice what the church teaches as the leaders of our home.
Yes. As I said, there's nothing new. This is a modern version of an old vice. It's a very pernicious version, but it's still the same old thing. And what we need to do is we have to get control of our appetites. Okay. And the way that we get control of our appetites is that we bring them into check. In order to do so, we have to have a combination of physical discipline and intellectual and spiritual discipline. Many people are, switched on to the idea that you have to have spiritual discipline. Like, a lot of men struggle with these vices, and it's not for lack of rosaries. It's not for lack of scripture reading. It's not for lack of daily mass even, or confession. They're really trying, and it's, no judgment here. This is a tough go. But then there's a purely physical side where, as a society, we have become institutionalized in our effeminacy. I mean, listen, I write this book about trying to be a real man. I still sit down at my desk for most of the day when I'm working. I have to make sure that I do hard things in order not to become soft physically. I got to work out. I got to get up early. I got to shovel the snow. I got to do these things. But men spend so many hours in their car and they're sitting down at work, and, Netflix is there and all these things. And it's just so easy to have this physical, lackadaisical attitude. So this is why men keep struggling, in my opinion. So one of the big things that we have to take from the church's tradition, of course, praying is first and all that sort of stuff. Yes. But when you look into the lives of the great saints or the methods of training great priests and great orders, for example, if you look at the Jesuits, I know the Jesuits have greatly fallen, but man, the Jesuits were great. And I love St. Ignatius of Loyola, and there's still some good Jesuits, and they should be praised for that. And, their training was military, that's how they were trained. The Holy Ghost Fathers, they used to be very good, before the Second Vatican Council. They basically evangelized all of French-speaking Africa. They would go have their training in northern France. And the intention of the training was basically to force them to be extremely ill, to separate the wheat from the chaff. So they would go up there and they would have no heat. There was only one room in the whole seminary that would have heat, and that was the common room where the district superior or the headmaster got to sleep, and that's where they'd listen to lectures and things. But northern France is cold. They'd have to, get the ice out of their tap in order to have the water running and things like that. And they'd have to go outside and do their reading and walk around with no gloves on, holding their books and reading outside. Anyway, within a month or so, it was common they would all come down with some severe flu. And the reason was because they had to be trained, because you were going to go to the bush in Africa and you were probably going to get malaria. So you had to have a robust system, a robust resolve. And, that's physical discipline. Of course, they said their divine office. Of course, they, prayed, of course. But they realized these are men with mortal bodies, and they have to be trained like soldiers in order to withstand conditions. We have to do that. We have to fast. We have to exercise hard. I don't care if it's weightlifting or running. Listen, I hate running. Running is really hard for me. I prefer weightlifting. If you're one of those guys who goes out and runs 5Ks every morning, God bless you. You're a freak compared to me. I can't do that stuff. My knees and all that stuff get all swollen. But you got to do something hard. You've got to fast, and it doesn't mean what Father Bob says when he says, well, for Lent, let's just fast from being negative. No, you've actually got to go. You don't just give up chocolate. You don't just give up drinking Coca-Cola, which might be hard for some people, I guess. But you say, no, what is fasting? Fasting means eating little to no food. You've got to skip some meals. You got to get rid of the steaks. You've got to actually lose some weight. You get that disgusting taste in your mouth because your tummy's grumbling, and you've got to hurt. You've got to do that often. And only when you do that, one of the reasons why men fall into the vice of evil images, for example, is it's actually, it's not that much different than the vice of gluttony that you can't control. This is why St. Paul says about the pagans that their God is their belly. He doesn't just mean they only love food. What he means is in their loins, they have this fire, this insatiable lust that they can't control because they feed it all the time. Well, if you want to get rid of your ability, or you want to get rid of your vice to evil images, one of the most effective ways is to really fast from food and become a master of your actual physical disciplines.
Yes, and what I love, Kennedy, you do have some really practical advice in this book, and you're talking to men and you're saying, look, guys, you don't have to go out and join the gym where everybody hangs out in there, listening to their devices and working out, and not even looking all around while they're working out at things they shouldn't be looking around at. But get yourself a home gym and go for it. And I love you. You sent me the pic of your dungeon a little earlier today, and I just loved it. And I'll tell you, for me, that's been the way to go. I have a gym on my front porch.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I advocate against, against going to the health club is just because, let's be honest, it's a very immodest setting, both because of the clothing, but also because of the insistence of vanity, besides the lusty part, just the insistence on vanity. That being said, there are gyms out there that I call them lifters gyms. I used to be a part of this gym it was a Gold's gym, but it had changed hands. And there was a part in that gym where it was like only power lifters and bodybuilders and serious lifters. I mean, if you found a woman in there, it was very rare. And, that's fine. You make your decisions about where you're going to go. But the health clubs are very dangerous places. So I recommend a home gym, which it was really expensive to build a home gym during the lockdowns. But everyone bought so much equipment, and it's all being sold on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. You can find a lot of stuff for like a quarter of the price now, and the prices are dropping. Few pieces of equipment. Listen, I grew up playing football and rugby and stuff, and I was always in these varsity gyms at university and things. And I know what an amazing gym is like. I wish I had, like a wall of hammer strength machines, all the stuff you see in NFL combine films and things. I wish I had that. But I got a bench press, I've got chin-ups, I've got squat, I've got some dumbbells, and I've got skipping rope and a dip station and a cement floor. I mean, goodness gracious, you can build a Navy SEAL with a chin-up bar and push-ups. You can find a way to be fit and strong and, aesthetically muscular even in your own home. And the nice thing too, if I didn't have a home gym, I wouldn't be able to keep my workouts up. I've got 35, 40 minutes I can, find in the morning or when the kids are asleep or something. And I can do that. And I can work out 5 or 6 days a week. Whereas if I had to drive to the gym, it's an hour and a half, 2 hour endeavor. I wouldn't be able to do it. And if I did, I'd spend more time away from my family, and I'd also be less productive in my professional life.
Yep. Kennedy, just thank you. I love that part of the book because it's something that so many men overlook. And I got to be honest with you, I'm stunned like how many young people can't even do a single push-up or a pull-up. And because they're spending so much time, in the basement playing video games. It's definitely time to get with the program, as one of your coaches probably would have told you back in high school.
Yeah. It's if you're not physically ready for a challenge, you have a body and you have a soul. Your soul is the form of your body. You can't have your soul asking your body to do the right thing if it's not capable of it. It's like the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. This is what Christ says. The flesh has to be strong. If the spirit wants you to overcome your vices, if you've got a wet noodle for a bicep, it's not going to happen. So you got to get after it.
Yep. Kennedy, when I was reading your book, I just kept thinking, you really have something to say to men. We need to explore this more. We need to bring you on more. I want to have a regular conversation with you. We'll come up with a name for it or something, but let's talk about strength and conditioning and the spiritual life and what it means to be a traditional Catholic man today and why that is absolutely vital. And I say this to you as someone who hasn't even been Catholic 4 years now. I recognize that it would be Catholicism that is the answer to these things you're talking about. Despite how much in disarray, we have outright heresy all the way up to the top of the church now. It is the Catholic Church, and I know this because I was a serious evangelical Christian for a long time, but as I really began to dig in to what Catholicism really teaches, I recognized that, being a Bible Christian meant that I overlooked a lot of things, birth control and how that has led to so many much of the insanity that we're experiencing today. So it is the church, and it's so beautiful the way you write about it in this book, Kennedy. And you talk about at the very beginning of the book, in the intro, you say, look, you got to pray the rosary daily. No excuses. You need to pray the rosary. And then at the end of the book, you tell this beautiful story about how you came to love the Blessed Mother. And I wonder if you can just share that with us now, Kennedy.
Sure. So I speak Spanish fluently. Yeah, I'm not bad for a gringo. And so when I got my job as a teacher, I was, moving towards a deeper faith and things. I was still learning a lot. I was still wrong about a lot of things, but I was trying. And in the school board that I was working in, it was a rural school board in southwestern Ontario. Not a lot of Spanish speakers in general. There were where I grew up in London, Ontario. That's why I was able to learn Spanish so well. But there wasn't a lot where I was. And I think I was one of only 2 people on the board who spoke Spanish as a teacher. So I was asked by someone, a friend of mine, she became the godmother of my second child. I was asked to go as a chaperone to Mexico. And the intention was to go and help with this mission to Mexico City, which actually was with Renewal Ministries. Ralph Martin, his thing, pretty cool place. And it's funny. I mean, I'm not a charismatic Catholic, but it's funny. I came in with the charismatics, and there's good people everywhere. And so I was asked to go to Mexico, and I kid you not, I did not know what an apparition was. I had no idea. I did not know what Our Lady of Guadalupe was. We got to the shrine on the first day, and they were like, "This is the image." And I was like, "What image? What are you talking about?" I feel like such an idiot even saying that. I learned about it while I was there. I was there because it was February and early March, and I was going to Mexico in the middle of a winter where the news had actually called it snowmageddon. We had so much snow because of global warming again. So I was going to go to this place with 28 degrees Celsius. It was a vacation. Anyway, I was open. I wanted to know more. I went there. We went to the shrine the first day, and then we spent 3 or 4 days in a garbage dump, essentially, with a shanty town, doing some very, poorest of the poor type stuff. And we visited a home for handicapped children who would have been aborted in any other country, and they had severe disabilities. And it was run by this nun who was like 92, Madre Ines, actually. She was a wonderful woman. She was like 92 years old at the time and was still kicking. And, I was very broken down. I realized, just how much of an idiot I was, how prideful, how much of a sinner I was and things. And the final day in the dump, we had mass. And, it's funny. I'm a traditionalist as much as the next guy. But it was a new mass and an Obisordo mass, and it was on a fold out card table, and we were under tarp, and it was not a glorious church or anything like that. But it was one of the most special moments of my life. And I remember taking Holy Communion and just falling to the dirt. And I just realized, it was like, from dust I come and to dust I'll return. I just realized the finitude of my life, the heaviness of my sin. I was just, it was one of those moments. And later, the next day, we went back to the shrine, and I'd finally found out what that whole thing was, So I realized how significant it was. And I remember it was like I ran up the stairs. If you've ever been to Guadalupe, it's a lot of stairs. It's a 7 or 8 minute quick walk up the stairs. And I sprinted up it, and I'm not a little person. And I knelt there in front of the shrine, in front of the shrine where Our Lady appeared to Juan Diego for probably 2 hours. I prayed the rosary a couple times. I prayed it wrong. I didn't even know what all the beads were. I knew the Our Fathers and the Hail Marys. I didn't know the mysteries. I didn't know anything. I just couldn't put the thing down. And then I sat, it's classic Mexico. 1 minute, it's like first world luxury. The next minute, it's, very third world. And so in this beautiful shrine, which was as world-class as much as the Vatican, everything like that, they had these dinky little plastic chairs where anyone over 180 pounds sat in them. The legs would bow underneath them. I'm a 240-pound ex-fullback, so I'm sitting in this chair. It's like bending underneath me. And I'm just blubbering like a baby. And I just, I don't claim to be a mystic. I'm not saying anything like that. But the Blessed Mother came into my life. And I came back from that trip, and I had found out about 3 or 4 days before we left that we were actually expecting our first child, who's now 6 years old. And he lost his second tooth last night, actually. And I did not know that Our Lady of Guadalupe was the patroness of the unborn. And God forgive me, before I was a practicing Catholic, I was very apathetic to the pro-choice position. I was just sort of a, whatever, who cares, not my business kind of thing. And I realized just how wrong that was. And the course of my life has been changed. And my poor wife, she had a husband who went to Mexico to get a tan and came back as a religious zealot. And God is very good, and the Holy Ghost is very powerful. And she came along with me very quickly. And now we have this wonderful Catholic marriage. But I will be a mama's boy for the rest of my life because of that.
Well, Kennedy, thank you for sharing that. I love that part of the book so much. I just finished it this morning, and it was such a blessing. You are doing exactly what God has called you to do. And my prayer is that just so many more people will learn about your work, what you're doing. You're a podcaster. Tell us about where people can find you, Kennedy.
So at LifeSite, I do a lot of stuff. I do a podcast with my friend Tim Flanders every Monday morning at The Meaning of Catholic. I do a lot of freelance writing as well for Crisis Magazine, 1 Peter 5, Catholic Family News. I did have a radio show with Mike Church, and it was wonderful. But my wife, she's come down with a severe nausea thing through this pregnancy, and I just need to be a lot more involved. She's healthy; that baby's healthy, but I just, the 2 hours a day live, I just couldn't commit it anymore, and it was tough. So, but I did have that show for a while. I do some videos with some friends of mine I worked with at the Fatima Center. We called the Kennedy Report. We're sort of working on some things there now. And I'm recording an audiobook for someone. And I do have another book in print as well. It's called Lockdown with the Devil. The original title was Family Be Damned, but I changed the title because I thought the lockdown was going to be a passing fad. So I didn't name it like that at the time. So it's very relevant still. And that's it's my homage to C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters. And it's written in the way of a devil trying to tempt a family to hell during the lockdown. And Father McTagg from Stations of the Cross Radio read it, and he was very honest. And he said, you were approaching C.S. Lewis's masterpiece. I was very hesitant, but he says, you did it, Kennedy. It wasn't cringe at all. And it was like, this is actually like Screwtape. So that was high praise from him. And besides that, just every day at LifeSite.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. Speaking about Every Day at LifeSite, I also just recently watched your interview that you did with John Henry about the truckers, the truckers protest. I'm going to put a link to that interview. It is so good, and also a link to the report you did with your iPhone when you went out in London, Ontario, and met with some of those guys. That was just so inspirational, Kennedy. It was so manly what these truckers were doing, and they just all put Justin Trudeau to shame. But thank you for the work that you've done. It's really been inspirational, just as an American, to see that the Canadians are finally saying that enough is enough. So God bless you for telling us all about it.
Thank you so much, Jim. This has been a pleasure. And I hope, you and I have been talking about our favorite whiskeys and cigars and things. And if this dang COVID curtain would fall at some time soon, perhaps we can meet in the summer and enjoy some of those things.
I can't wait to see you, brother. I'll take you for a mountain man hike. I live right off the Appalachian Trail, and then we will avail ourselves of those beverages and fine smokes, sir. But the name of the book is Terror of Demons: Reclaiming Traditional Catholic Masculinity. This is essential reading, folks. Moms, wives, buy these for the men in your life. They will be blessed, and you know what? When they are blessed, you are blessed. So, Kennedy Hall, God bless you, brother.
Thank you.